Well, hey guys, if you're new around here, my name is Marshall Swift. I'm the Minister of Worship Technology for Beaumont's First Baptist Church here in Beaumont, Texas. And I get a really unique perspective doing what I do. So, as both the AVL director and a worship leader on stage, as well as being a professional performing musician outside of here, I get to see both sides of that coin that is putting on a service or a live show somewhere. And so if you're in this weird transitional phase, transitioning from wedges to in-ears, or maybe you're looking for a more budget-friendly option to do that, or maybe you're already using in-ears and you're looking for something a little more reliable and a little more stable, while also keeping your budget in mind, I think I've got something you're going to want to take a look at. A couple of somethings actually, and both of them are really nice on the pocketbook. Well, let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, the Phenyx Pro PWM-10 and the PDP-M. Now, before we get going here, yes, Phenyx Pro did send these to me to check out. However, all of the opinions in this video are my own. Phenyx Pro has zero say-so in what goes in this video as well. They don't get to see this video before you do. So, know that. Which brings me to my next point. Yes, I did use these both in a real world scenario before I ever considered making a video about them. I try to do that with any product that I review, whether it's from a company or whether it's something that I purchase myself. I'm not going to bring you guys something that I haven't used and that I don't think is worth giving a shot. So we will start with the PWM-10 and then we will move on to the PDP-M, because while they essentially do the same thing, their feature set is a little bit different. All right, so the PWM-10 is a wired in-ear monitoring system, but it has a few tricks up its sleeve. The first of which is that this thing comes in at $93. This is a stereo in-ear monitoring system. You have a master volume here and then individual input volumes here for input 1 and 2. But that's not the coolest part. What is the coolest part is that here on the top, you have a PoE or battery switch, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as a mono or stereo switch. If you use this in mono mode, you get both inputs equally into both ears. If you use this in stereo mode, input 1 goes to the left and input 2 goes to the right. Here's why that's cool. So for instance, let's say you're a drummer. You've got a stereo mix and you're not getting enough click. An easy solution to fix that is to go to a mono mix, put the band mix in input 1 and then put your click in input 2. And now once they run your click up, you've got individual volume control of just that click. Another scenario where this is great is for vocals. You can have your band mix in 1 and your vocal in 2, and now you've got individual control over your vocal. Well, how do we get a stereo mix into this one little receiver here? I'm glad you asked. This is the transmitter, and here on the end, we have inputs 1 and 2, or outputs from the console, 1 and 2, and then we have our power here. So you remember earlier I mentioned that there was a battery or PoE switch here where you can decide if you want this to run on batteries or over PoE. Now, if you're unfamiliar with PoE, that's power over Ethernet. It means that the Ethernet cable connected to your device is powering your device. Now, not all devices that have a network port on them are compatible with this function, but this one is, and let me show you how. Here on the end of the receiver and the transmitter, we have a network port. And then in the box, you get this Ethercon cable. What is an Ethercon cable, you ask? That is a Cat6 cable, essentially, that has an XLR style casing around the connector so that it can connect and lock into place with a much stronger hook than just your standard Ethernet cable. So when done correctly, you have your receiver here and your transmitter here, and then the transmitter can go wherever you like it to. This can go over by your board, or maybe you're just running it down the wall or something out of the way where you can get it to wall power. And yes, this does come with a power adapter in the box for just that reason, as well as batteries if you choose to run it off of batteries. You might be in a position where you don't have power close to you, and that's okay. So my real world experience using the PWM-10 was actually playing drums. And so when I test these products, I try to test them in an environment that is maybe awkward or slightly rigorous, just to see that it can work outside of the perfect scenario, but I also try to use them in situations that are appropriate for that device. What are the downfalls of this? It's really neat. It's got some cool features, but where are the roadblocks with the PWM-10? Just because I want to be honest with you guys, I would not use this as a frontline musician. Meaning, if I'm on the front line of the band and I'm moving around a lot, I'm not going to want to be tied to this. Now, I understand there's a lot of worship scenarios where people are still using wired in-ears, and that's totally okay. If you're stationary or you're moving a little bit and you don't think this is going to bother you, it'd be really easy to run this up in a loom with a guitar cable coming from your board where it just connects to the back of your strap. No problem with that. But the scenario I used this in was outside of the church campus, so it's not some place where it was a permanent fixture. And so setting it up and tearing it down in that fashion was not convenient. However, the way I used it was very convenient. I ran it down the wall about 10 feet to where my inputs came in. There was power right there, so I just plugged everything in, and then I only had to run about 10 foot of that Ethercon cable over to the drum throne, hooked it right onto my pocket, and no problem. Okay, so before we talk about where it's ideal or appropriate to use this system, I want to show you one more thing that I thought was just like, hey, that's really thoughtful. The Ethercon cable goes in the top of this so that when it hangs down, here's the clip on your pocket, when you look down at it, it means that the controls are now facing you when you look down at it. Whoever said that in that meeting, good job, buddy. All right, so let's hit the pros and cons, and then we'll talk about where it's appropriate to use this. So I really, really like what I showed you earlier about the ability to flip this into mono mode and blend two signals together. This is known as mix mode in some wireless in-ear systems, if you're familiar with that. To get something at this price point that allows you to do either or, have a traditional stereo mix or have a mix mode style mix, that's really, really cool to me, and I really like that feature. Now let's talk about one more thing that is a pro, but is going to begin leading to my cons. 15 hours of operation time on battery. 2 standard AAA batteries in this thing will run it for 15 hours is what Phenyx Pro claims. Now, I didn't test that firsthand. However, I did use the batteries that came in the box for 2 different gigs that were 3.5-ish hours each, and I just left it on the whole time to see what would happen. And I still had juice at the end of the second show, same set of batteries. So I know it'll get 7 hours, but they claim 15 hours on 2 AAA batteries. So that begins leading me to the cons. Let me show you this. This is probably my biggest gripe with this system, which you're going to go, that's not that big a deal. And you're right. But in the way, in the manner that I would prefer to use this, yeah, it was kind of inconvenient. So like I showed you earlier, here are your 2 inputs, and then here's your power. That's 3 leads. They're all the same length coming off of the transmitter. Now, that's a good thing in the sense of a snake. You want all your leads to be the same length so that they can bend and go any direction. But it seems that it would have just been a little more convenient to not include this 3rd line for power out of here and just had a power input on the device itself where you just plug in the included power adapter. That way, when you're running it in battery mode, you don't have just this extra 3rd lead laying out on the floor, either getting stomped on or having to fold it up and tie it up somewhere. That was just inconvenient when I did use it in battery mode, but it was really convenient in battery mode not having to run power or find an extension cord or anything like that. Now, the other con is simply a comparison, and that is to the next system we're going to look at. This is a lot of parts. So you have your transmitter, you have your receiver, you have the power adapter, and you have the Ethercon cable. But that transmitter having those 3 leads coming off of it is just a little bit messy and kind of hard to make look tame on stage. But those are my only cons to this. I really like this. And so where is this appropriate to use? This is super appropriate if you're a drummer, if you're a bass player, even keys, anything that's a little more stationary than normal or a seated position. Where is this not appropriate to use? And I won't say that it's not appropriate. It would be inconvenient. I'm thinking about what I do as a worship leader and as a guitar player, which those are the 2 things I'm normally doing together at one time is playing guitar and singing, whether it's in the secular world or leading worship. It would be a real pain to constantly have to unplug and walk away and come back, and then pick it up and plug in again. And because you're attached, you're tied down. In the same breath, I guess it's no different than a guitar cable, but I'm wireless 99% of the time these days. So to me, it's an inconvenience. I also would not hand this to a singer that is just a singer and they're walking around constantly or they're moving around stage a lot, because you're dragging that cable with you. Especially if you're using a wired microphone. And so now you're dragging two cables and you don't want to get your feet twisted up in that. But that's kind of where it's appropriate and not appropriate for me. One more thing that I didn't mention is that this thing has a ton of headroom. I had volume for days on this. Very clear sound stage. I'm very, very happy with this product for what it is. And yeah, you can go find a version out there. Somebody's got a version that's got like 3 inputs on it, and that's all well and good. But just remember that for every input you have, you're not only adding another one of these leads, you're also taking up another output on your console. All right, y'all, let's dive into the PDP-M. This has become my favorite of the two systems for no other reason than it's wireless and it's rechargeable. Now, this does come in at a little higher price point than the PWM-10, which was $93. This comes in at $200. But I've not found a system on the market of this quality at that price point. So very, very impressed with that. So let's dive into the features of this, and then we'll talk about pros and cons, and just like the other one, where it's appropriate and where it's not. So here's your transmitter, here's your receiver. These don't take alkaline batteries. They are rechargeable over USB-C. You get 4 hours of battery life out of the transmitter and 7 hours of battery life out of the receiver. And if you need more than that out of the transmitter, I just advise plugging it up to power and letting it go. I have been told that if you use this in mono mode, you get a little more battery out of it, but I haven't confirmed that with Phenyx Pro. That was just from a friend who's got one of these. That said, the stereo thing's a little weird here, and so I'm going to talk about that a little later. Moving on, this goes directly in if you need it to, or you can plug it into a cable and into your system that way, just to give yourself a little more space. You have a power button, channel buttons here, and then same thing here. You have an on-off volume knob, and then you have your channel buttons there. Headphones or in-ear monitors go there. Included in the box, you do get a few accessories and niceties that you don't get with the PWM-10, and that's okay. Of course, you get a little case candy, you get a sticker, you get the charging cable, you get this XLR to 1/4 inch adapter, you get a little leatherette bag to throw everything in, and then you get a set of headphones. Now, it's super thoughtful of them to throw this in just in case you don't have anything, but I personally am not and would not use these, just simply because they are not going to give you enough seal for this to be an efficient system. So what sets this apart from some of the other rechargeable miniature portable wireless in-ear systems out there? 24-bit 48 kilohertz audio digital circuitry, which means you're getting a clearer, better sound than you would through analog, as well as it's in the 900 frequency band. That means you're avoiding a lot of your normal wireless that's out there right now, and you're avoiding a lot of cheap wireless that's out there right now, like 2.4 or 5.8 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. The final thing is that this system can do, as I said earlier, both mono and stereo. Now, this is the only XLR input on the transmitter. However, here on the side is a little 3.5 millimeter jack that says left in. And so there's one more thing included in the box that I didn't show you guys. This is how you get stereo out of the PDP-M. So you take this 3.5 millimeter TRS and you plug it in to where it says left in, and now you have stereo capabilities should you need them. Now, is this the most convenient way to do this? Of course not. But if you need stereo, it's there. And for 200 bucks, dude, that's pretty stinking solid. All right, let's jump into some pros and cons and talk about where this is appropriate to use and where it's not. Pros, lots of headroom. I had plenty of volume with this thing and was super, super happy with that. Con, the volume knob is just a smooth roll volume knob. There is no way of getting it exactly where it was the last time. Something else really cool about this is that it is a 30 milliwatt transmission, meaning that this transmitter is transmitting at a higher power output than most of your cheap or budget-friendly wireless. It's cool because that means if you're doing things right and you've got a line of sight connection, you're going to get a way more stable connection than something that's running on 2.4 or 5.8. Another pro is this is in the 900 frequency band and has 16 selectable channels. Now, the con here is that those 16 channels are compressed. So they're in a smaller range. They're right next to each other. It's not like you have, say, 900 to 998 that you can pick from. It's going to be a smaller range in that. But I've not had any issues with it so far. I mean, I've used it in some relatively dense RF environments, and it's been wonderful. I've been very, very happy with that. Another pro is just its compact design, dude. This is super convenient to throw in a guitar case or a gig bag or something like that, where you don't have a ton of space. I've been really, really impressed with its size and its build quality. This pack is sturdy. All right, so where is it appropriate to use this and where is it not? Houses of worship, yes, very appropriate if you're making that transition from wedges to in-ears, or you're going to wireless for the first time and you don't have a ton of dense RF around you, or maybe you're using it in your youth area where you don't have to necessarily coordinate wireless with the rest of the campus. A great option for that. Now, in the secular space is where I would be a little more careful with this, just because it's a less controllable environment. You can control a lot of the RF environment on your campus, versus you never know where you're going for the next gig with the secular world. So you might be in a really optimal environment one night, and the next night you're in a big city where the RF is just terrible. So just be aware of that sort of thing. But as far as functionality, heck yeah, dude. Use this in a secular environment. Use this in a house of worship environment, especially if nobody else around you is using wireless. But outside of that, yeah, this is a great system to deploy in either venue. Well, guys, that is the PWM-10 and the PDP-M. I've talked a lot in this video, and so I hope I didn't run you off. But that is my real world use case of these. I've enjoyed using them both, and they've been wonderful. So both of these are a great way to transition to in-ears in your worship ministry. And if you're looking to transition from wired to wireless, again, a great option there with the PDP-M. If you have questions, throw them below. I'll include links to these down in the description. I hope you'll go check them out, and I'll see you guys real soon.